trying to get through this.
Easy for listening. I wasn't able to do it.
Easy for dancing.
I'm not a great lover of cats. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Not me. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Have Your Say, one-on-one shadowboxing. Today my guest at WTV Studios, Aaron Young. He is the co-founder of a festival called Expresstival. Expresstival, what is that, Aaron? It's a very attractive, nice sort of title.
Thank you.
What is it?
So Expresstival is the highlight event of Anti-Poverty Week. And the purpose of the event is to use music and art, creative means, to encourage people to discuss the causes and consequences of poverty.
Anti-Poverty Week. I don't think I heard about too much in the media or otherwise in the past years. What is the Anti-Poverty Week? Is it a worldwide organized week or something just local, or tell us about it?
So Anti-Poverty Week's a national initiative. It's about discussing the causes and consequences of poverty, encouraging research, encouraging action and conversation around some of the issues related to poverty. So there's a Anti-Poverty Week committee in each state, and they run activities and initiatives throughout the week to encourage people to engage in this conversation.
Poverty is a big issue worldwide, as we know, Aaron, and in Australia as well. Seems to me politicians, all through the decades, devoted their life to solve poverty and get rid of poverty. In Australia, I remember one of our Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, made a statement when he became a Prime Minister, he will solve the young people, the child poverty in Australia and the homelessness of the young people.
By 1990, no Australian child will be living in poverty.
And he came into power, he spent lots of time as a Prime Minister, and when he left office, and still today, and he's an old man, the problem is not solved. What do you think, why is that?
One thing that I see is really key is understanding the issues around poverty. And I often think that sometimes our leaders, especially a lot of them have come from wealthy kind of backgrounds, don't fully have an understanding of all the issues. As someone myself who's lived below the poverty line, I don't think I fully appreciated what some of the issues are and how they actually affected me until I'd been in a situation where I was covering my rental expenses. I had maybe about $80 a week to live off, and there was a lot of challenges I faced, and particularly because I was so ashamed of the situation, I didn't want to ask for help. So one, I think we don't fully understand the issues, and I found social isolation in that particular situation to be really important. And at the time I didn't know how to help myself, and the only way, after a number of months of living that way, actually speaking out and reaching out to people made a massive difference. On average, someone who grows up in a family, a young person below the poverty line, is on average 3 years behind in their education by the time they get to year 10. So the cycle of people living below the poverty often perpetuates, because I see education as a really key part of raising yourself out of that, that poverty zone. And so
if you can afford
it.
Education.
Yeah, and also there's a number of challenges when you're in a situation where you don't have money, like some of the things that you take for granted, making sure you've got proper food that's nutritious, taking care of even just smaller things. If you need to buy something for school, trying to source things when you don't have money is quite difficult. And I found myself, things that would be as simple as just going down to the shop and getting something, then becoming a massive issue for me, because I've got to find someone that I can borrow tools off, I can borrow resources off, and something that would be a 10-minute job then turns into something that takes a day. And so how are you supposed to compete with someone and be on the same level with someone when you've got so many challenges? So I think it's really important that we understand that there are a lot of challenges particularly for young people that have been born into this situation and they need to be supported.
How do you get into your hardship experience? So what was the curse of it? Because there's so many things in life which people sort of saying, these people just don't want to work, that's why they are in poverty, and so on and so forth. So how a young person like you get into that poverty situation when it's happened to you?
Yeah, so my situation, so I used to be an architect.
Yes?
I started running a number of different community events, like Expresstival and some different community projects, and I found that I started doing that because I wanted to contribute in the community. I was really connected to some of the issues around this, and I was working with my auntie who was a volunteer at Manor, an organisation that feed the homeless, and I wanted to help. And I started a social enterprise and I pretty much risked it all to start an enterprise running hip-hop and performance programs in schools to re-engage kids with education.
Yes.
And I took a risk and it didn't pay off, and then I ended up in a situation where I had a number of debts. I didn't really have much income coming in, and I found myself struggling to make ends meet.
How was that when you realized you are in trouble? You are, really couldn't manage yourself. Was easy to get and see outside of that box what you get into, or was very hard?
It was very difficult. Because I was so ashamed, the fact that I knew that a lot of people looked to me as someone who had my affairs in order, who was, I was a leader in so many different groups and on events, and so I didn't want people to know that I was like completely struggling behind the scenes. So I tried to hide it. I cut off a lot of my friends and family for a couple of months there, where I didn't really venture out, and I kind of isolated myself and tried to sort the problem out on my own. And
what's happened when you get into the stages? You couldn't really solve it.
No, I couldn't solve it by myself. And it was only through starting to talk about the issues that I was facing. I started to talk to my family, particularly my mum, and I started to talk to some of my friends about what I was facing, and then...
And what sort of reaction you got?
Yeah, and then, everyone that I spoke to was pretty supportive and just, how can we help you? For me, it took a lot of courage to actually say, well, hang on a minute, I am struggling here and I need some help.
So you've been lucky because of your surroundings really helped you. You think that help is very much needed in a big scale?
Yes, I think it is. And it's really a focus for me, and with what we're doing with Expressival and Anti-Poverty Week, is about connecting people in the community. I think that we can't necessarily always rely on governments and service providers to provide everything that we need, and when we're in this situation. So I think it's really important to foster strong relationships with our family and our friends and in the community, and to know the people that live around us, so that if we do ever find ourselves in these situations, that we can find help. Obviously with the economic climate in Perth at the moment, a lot of people have or may lose their jobs and find themselves in a situation of unemployment over the next year or so. So it's really important for people not to feel like they're going to be looked down on, or to remove that stigma around asking for help when people find themselves struggling.
So it's one thing an individual asking for help, and like you got the help from your surroundings and from your family, so you can take the next step and you get out from that very difficult hardship or situation. But how many people in Australia is living in poverty?
So,
what the statistics say?
So in Australia, over 2.5 million people live below the poverty line. In Perth, there's approximately 10,000 people that are homeless, so that's one subsector of poverty.
Yes.
But it ranges on a number of levels. There's a lot of people that are in that are in the situation I was in previously, where they're not homeless but really struggling to make ends meet.
Okay, so 2.5 million people living under the poverty line, or living in poverty, so not under the poverty line. What is the definition of poverty?
So the way that poverty is defined in Australia is we usually look at it in terms of 50% of the median income, and we look at
Per head.
per head. So, and the extreme poverty we look at in Australia, which is approximately 800,000 people, is 30% of the median income. So to give you an idea of what that looks like for an average Australian, that for an individual, that's your housing expenses plus $130 a week to live off. Could take one, parking ticket, and then all of a sudden,
Your life is screwed up big time.
Yeah, exactly. So it
That's
makes you
more
very,
issue.
it makes it very vulnerable. It makes you very vulnerable.
Aaron, we have to go for a short break, but please stay with us because after the break, we're coming back with more discussion on poverty and how to solve it, hopefully.